All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. And have we got an exciting episode of Winter Series today, Ben? It is someone who's migrated to this country, taken up the opportunity that exists to invest in property and created a very sizable amount of equity in a small amount of time, Ben. What else?
Bryce, this is a story of anything is possible. So I can't wait for everyone to learn about Mila's and Braden's journey.
This is a great episode of the Winter Series, folks. Let's rip into it now.
Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, Ben, very exciting day today as we talk to a very special TPC listener. Her name is Mila Holmes. Welcome to the Property Couch, Mila.
Hi, Bryce. Hi, Ben. Good to be here.
Welcome. We're excited to chat to you, but we're going to kick off today's proceedings by just talking about money. When you were growing up over the dinner table, what were the conversations like for you?
Well, in fact, there were no conversations about money in my household at the dinner table. So I'm going to give you a bit of backstory here. So I was born in the country that doesn't exist anymore, the former USSR. So I was born in the 80s, and kind of my early childhood coincided with early 90s when the kind of the USSR crumbled, and the money was a very stressful topic because, as well, some people do know that, but in the USSR, all banks, where all my parents' money were owned by the state, and kind of overnight it disappeared pretty much. So a few million people woke up poor without having their savings. So yeah, so there was no conversations around that. And my family, so both my parents are engineers, so I come from that kind of educated background. But yeah, at some point in the early 90s, my dad lost his job when kind of the whole kind of system started shutting down and the country reconfigured itself. Yes, so... And yeah, the money was a stressful topic. So, and kind of, I have such a great respect for my parents to bringing us up in that environment, with such uncertainty, with such challenges. Yeah, because what do you do when you lose your job and your wife is a stay-at-home mom with two kids? At some point, Dad, I think, borrowed money from, I don't know, cash converters, some shady characters or whatever. Grew up there in that kind of after the collapse of the Soviet Union, whatever systems appeared. So we also had that kind of negative outlook on borrowing when we were growing up, because when I think I was in my early teens, when I realized that Dad had some kind of bad debts, and people were knocking on the doors and, threatening phone calls, all that sorts of things that, yeah.
It sounds obviously horrible, right? So when a nation like that crumbles, and to your point that, everything evaporates, there's no form of value, there's so much to sort of plug into here from a psychological and behavioural point of view. Tell us about the sort of living arrangements and what was happening. So when there's no money coming in, is the housing supplied by the state, or did you own the property? Tell us a little bit about the sort of housing story.
Oh yeah, that's very different to what kind of here in Australia. So the housing was formerly owned by the state in the Soviet Union. So we didn't have mortgages, we didn't have to pay. We just have to pay the bills, electricity, and the rates, the council rates basically. But I grew up in what is a share house. So in historical center of St Petersburg, and a one big apartment that was divided into 5 sections, and each room was for a family with a communal bathroom and kitchen. Wow. And we lived there until I probably was about 5. And then my mum was pregnant with my brother, and Dad got from the state, he's been allocated 2 rooms in another shared apartment. So we just moved into another kind of building in historic St. Petersburg, historical center of St. Petersburg, where we now had 2 rooms and the other family had 1 room. And yeah, but the same story with bathroom and kitchen. Like,
So,
yeah,
so,
so it's,
so what sort of numbers are we talking about here? So if you've got one room in an apartment, which is effectively a sort of sub house of a building, are we talking about 7 to 10 people using one bathroom, one kitchen facility?
yeah.
Tell us about what that would
Well,
typically look like.
yeah. So I don't remember how many people were there in that 5-room one, but well, me, mom, and dad 3, and then other family. They had 2 daughters, so that's 7. Plus, I think the other 3 rooms were occupied by singles. So yeah, 10 people actually using the same facilities. Yeah, and they're not family to each other, so that's a pretty mind
Like
blowing.
strangers. Yeah.
Yeah, and then when we moved to that two rooms, so we had one other family with 1 child there, so 7 people, 4 adults, 3 kids. Yeah, and the square footage I think was about 90 square meters there. Yeah, my family still owns those 2 rooms because at some point in mid-90s they were like privatized, so there were processes applied when families who lived there can actually own the place. So yeah, so that was a win, and they rent these rooms out now. So yeah.
Can you tell us what sort of impressions and what that meant for you when you were growing up and you were navigating what you've just described there with different people with different agendas, all in a 90 square meter apartment? How did you feel safe as a 5-year-old or younger? How did your parents ensure that the people who you were co-living with were of a character that could be around young children? Like, these are things that we don't have to think about here, right? So, can you help us better understand what that was like?
Look, I think because I didn't know anything different, so that kind of felt normal for me. So that like that's how people live, and then I know that my cousins didn't live in the same kind of arrangements. So when we went to visit them, it was like, oh wow, some people just actually have the whole place to themselves. This is amazing. But I think we kind of adjusted to it pretty easily. Kids are resilient, and we were friends with like that other boy that was growing up next to us in the other room. And yeah, and well, my parents had obviously civil, like good relationships, or tried to maintain good relationships with the neighbors and share stuff, and help each other out. There were issues when like they were having a party because I think they were like on the music scene, and then their father there was a composer, and there were like some bohemian characters coming. And yeah, when mom told us like stay in your room, kind of don't go out. If you need to go out, just come get dad, and yeah, that type of thing. So yeah, fascinating.
So, I mean, I'm digesting all of this because
It's going to sound like fantasy.
well, look, again, for our community who are listening to this is what it's like in other parts of the world. I mean, we do live in one of the great countries on the planet in terms of having that government in place. Even though they're not great, they still make mistakes, but that stability of governance, and then obviously not having a country imploding in on itself, which is what we've seen happen over in the USSR, and the ramifications of that. So take us into your teenage years, and then ultimately tell us about the story moving across and migrating to Australia. How did that play itself out?
Yeah, well, in my teenage years, we actually moved into like a separate place. So I was finally able to leave here and to realize what it is to live in like when we own the whole thing, which was really nice. And so I graduated from school in 2001 and started uni because my parents drummed it into both of us, me and my brother, that education is the most important thing for you. This is what they could give us. And yeah, so the uni was free back then. There was kind of this process is starting when the amount of uni placements subsidized by state were going down. But because I was always a good study, I got in, and I got a business management degree in 2006. Started working. Well, I've actually worked through uni, which was not very typical for Russia at that time. It kind of was, the parents supported kids throughout uni, but I supported myself and my brother too. So so I've started and finished uni in 2006, worked in retail management, sales, and then I moved into government administration. And there's kind of a failed marriage there in the mix too. So a few things happened before I turned 28 and moved to Australia. So I started Australia immigration process in about 2011, I think. Applied for permanent residency, and I got a state-sponsored permanent residency in South Australia. So saved up. I was always a good with saving because remember debt was bad. I didn't want to have any debt, no consumer credit, nothing like that, no buying cars, nothing. So I saved up $20,000 and I moved to Adelaide in July 2013, just by myself. So that was like a huge leap of faith, but I always wanted to be in a society that looks after its citizens, that kind of has a more positive vibe around it, and that's what Australia represents to me. And I'm so lucky and so grateful that I'm here. And
What
I've
were
built
the
a whole new
choices
life
that you
here.
had around that, Mila, when you were deciding whether to emigrate to Australia or, was it Canada or the US, or what were some of the things that you were thinking?
I was actually thinking Europe, like Spain or Italy or Argentina. I was studying Spanish at the time, and I was languages do come easily, naturally to me. So I was studying Spanish. So I thought, oh, maybe I'll go to Argentina. But then it just was by chance. I just chose Australia. Let's say
Right.
that. Or life chose it for me. But
So you mentioned, so if we just do a tiny rewind,
yeah.
if there was no conversations around money and there was some of this stuff that was happening around living and the USSR, um, what were the observations that you were making about money then? What did you see your parents doing? What were the things that they had to do to be able to navigate money in an environment and a government system that you were exposed to?
I had that. The observations that I made when I was growing up was that money was scarce and the resources were scarce. So, and that there's whole that negativity around like people who have money, they likely like stolen it, or acquired it through some improper means. Yeah. So, and it was hard for me to start believing that if you actually apply yourself, you study, you work, you're driven, you have the drive, you want to succeed, you will. And I just didn't see it happening in Russia for me. Yeah, so that was such a strong belief. And I started traveling from a very young age. I started traveling when I was 19 or 20. I went to Europe and I saw that people can live differently. You can, like the ordinary citizens who work through all their life, they can have a good life, stable life that yeah, pay off the house, go on holidays, and yeah.
There must have been a real trust issue with money as well. Like ultimately, when a society collapses and your parents' money is basically evaporated through a banking system that doesn't exist anymore, um, so did you find that your parents were not putting money into banking institutions? They were putting money under their mattress and all of that sort of. Was that a
That's
very
right.
common thing?
Yes, that's right. That was a very common thing. When there was something to put aside, it was always cash. We were paid in cash because that it still exists in Russia that people official salaries are like tiny, and then the rest of the money they get under the table in the form of like an envelope. So the businesses pay less taxes. It's a whole big bubble there. So
Yeah, so there's a lot of black money in that
yeah,
country. There's a lot
yeah,
of corruption.
yeah.
We know it's a very authoritarian state. We know who it's led by. We don't need to go into that, difficult political story that we hear and we're dealing with right across the world at the moment. But it's this breaking this belief, this pattern of that's really interesting for us. That I mean, one, you've educated yourself, which is really, really wonderful. And that's opened up the doors of opportunity for you. So that's got to be a massive takeaway for anyone out there. Education is the way you break through in life. Get educated, education brings out opportunity. And then you're able to then start to break those habits. So you're still very careful with your money, a great saver from the origin story, you've got there. When did the transition move from money controlling you, in terms of this whole idea of protect, 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 into basically starting to think that money could be something that you could make work for you in a more advantageous way?
That actually happened in Australia, probably a couple of years into my relationship with Braden. I met him in Adelaide in 2013, and we moved around the country, like Newcastle and Townsville. And I think around 2016, when we've purchased our first property that we've sold since, I realized that can be something that, money can bring. Paver, yellow brick road into the bright future. Yeah, through the good debt, through acquiring properties and assets, and yeah. So I owe like a lot of that education and shift in my mindset to my partner, who showed me the way that this is how it is, because he's always been a great saver and obviously grew up in a different environment, and yeah, and he always knew that money is not fickle. So if you have it, you will always have it. If you have your spending habits under control, you kind of have your priorities set right, and you work for your goals. So, and I got on board with that because I just saw how amazing it can be, and yeah.
And how did you build that knowledge story up? Well, like, were you doing reading on that? Well, obviously the podcast. Like, tell us some of the avenues as someone who obviously is big on educating themselves. What sort of content were you consuming that helped build up that knowledge base to give you the confidence to act?
Podcasts and books. I've read your books, both of your books, the Armchair Guide and the Money Smarts, Implementing Money Smarts, which really put us as a family unit on the way to where we're now. Yeah, so just reading and listening and taking on what worked, trying things out, like what works for me, what doesn't work for me, what I'm ready to sacrifice and what I'm not ready to sacrifice. Like, say, travel with family is not something that I can sacrifice or save on, but other things like buying a new car were easily, of course. So yeah.
So just really sensible,
Really,
common sense approaches and running systems and frameworks by the sounds of things.
Yeah, well, basically, what I like to think that my life is my biggest project, and so yeah, applying my project management skills to my life and constantly tracking where you're at.
You gave us a bit of a hint there regarding Braden, your husband, but in terms of his background. But how much is your money management now in alignment? Was there times in the past when they weren't in alignment? How are your two money personalities merging?
We've through conversation, through discussion. It was a long process for us because I at first wasn't on board with like having a joint account, and I didn't like, why do I need that? Maybe if I want to just spend my money freely. But then I realized if I keep spending my money freely, I'm not going to get to where we both want to be. We had this chats about like, hey, we were both growing up with like money scarcity, or like very modest lifestyles, and we talked about like, look, we never want to be poor again. We want to be abundant. We want to have that abundance available to us and our kids. And I went, obviously when we retire as well, we want to have passive income. So let's get going. And the first step was to have the joint bank account. And and from then on, we started implementing the Money Smart system.
So can you tell us a little bit more? Can we double click on that story? Prior to that, did you have lots of bank accounts? Was the money sort of everywhere, or was it quite disciplined? And then Money Smart just gave you that extra 5 or 10%? Or tell us that transition and what's been the benefit of that story.
I have always had one bank account, same for my husband. So it was always very disciplined in terms of where money is, where super is. Like, one of the first things Braden told me, like, is your super in one account? Like, when I started working, he met me when I was already working. He's like, just double check that it's all in one place. I'm like, okay. And I had 2 accounts at the time because I was none the wiser, how the system worked. So so one super, one bank account, and we just had to pick a bank and obviously put when we borrowed for Townsville, all the money was in one bank account already by then, or maybe not.
And were you spreadsheeters before you then got onto the more platform, or no? It was just sort of
we just had a very loose idea of where the money is going, but no spreadsheets. So spreadsheets appeared when the Money Smarts, When we started implementing Money Smarts.
Is Braden from Europe like you, or is he Australian?
He's Australian. He grew up in Watsonia, in the same house where we're living now. So.
What's interesting is where you are now. Before we started recording, Ben said, well, and I saw the look on his face. He goes, and effectively you're 400 meters away from where he
Yes.
grew up. My wife grew up in Watsonia, so this is all
Hmm.
tying on. Do you think that the migrant mentality that you have has given you a bit of a strategic edge? And the backstory on that is that when we interviewed the CEOs of Judo Bank, Joseph Healy talked strongly about the migrant mentality being something that they look for in people because of the fact that there's this paradigm and there's this, I guess, this lived experience where coming over here, they come for an opportunity. Do you see that as a strategic advantage now that you and Braden are on the same page with money, and also you've renewed trust with money again in this country? Is that an advantage for you?
100%.
Why?
Yeah. Once again, for the drive, for the desire to be prosperous, for the desire to be abundant, for seeing opportunities everywhere around me. I can't explain it. I just feel it. It's there.
Is it difficult for you when you observe Australian nationals, for example, who I haven't had too much adversity in my life, Miller. I've got to be honest. I grew up in Perth to two wonderful parents who remain married. I've got traditional upbringing, so I'm one of the very blessed and lucky folks who don't have a worldview that's been challenged from what I currently exist. But I guess when you observe Australians coming through life who don't actually take action like you have. Does that sort of puzzle you, or do you just clearly delineate the fact that they might not have the perspective that you have that creates the action that you've taken?
It's a hard question. I don't want to sound judgmental at all, and don't want any controversy here, because I work with a lot of Australians and they're amazing people. Yes, we're just different in that way. I just realize that we're all different, and some qualities that I have they don't have, and other way around. There's great qualities in like Australians that I work and I'm friends with.
No, sorry, I probably didn't set that up well because I didn't want you to create a division. But I guess for Ben and I, the whole thing of this podcast is it's the last statement that comes out of Ben's mouth every single week now for over 400 episodes is knowledge is empowering, but only if you act on it right. So we are spending a whole career trying to find reasons why people act and other reasons why people don't act. So you just have this unique sort of perspective to sort of go, isn't that interesting? I've got this background that's causing me to take action and observational. So I probably set that up in a way that was a little unfair for you if you thought they had to compare against Australians. It's just more of an observational thing around that migrant mentality. And you've said, yes, that actually is an advantage. So thank you for that. Hey, the next question is then you make a choice around investing and you have some choices to make. You could go down a whole range of paths, and the most obvious ones are shares and property. You've chosen property. Why was property something that you felt strongly about?
Because of the liquidity of it. Like, it's something you can touch, it's something you can have, you can look at it, you can live in it, you can sell it. And I didn't have a good understanding of shares around when we started investing in property, and property seemed like in Australia the market is always booming. I didn't know that it really depends on the asset that you choose and the area and the state and everything. So yeah, and I think it's partly because of my background and the way I grew up. I just wanted to have a tangible asset that is right there for me.
So let's start to unpack the story. That you've given us a little clue earlier that you had a property that you bought and sold. So tell us, sort of how that went from a numbers point of view. How long did you hold it for? Was there a gain that was realised? Did that allow you to take the next step in terms of your property journey?
You're gonna love this, guys. It's classic. It's a classic story. So we bought an apartment in a multi-level, very fancy apartment building in Townsville on the riverfront with a pool, a sauna, secure car park, whatever you name it. It's all
in-house
there.
concierge.
Concierge, yeah, you name it. No concierge, but the manager who looks after the building, just there on the premises. Yeah. So gym as well. I think the spa, everything that you can possibly have. Great lifestyle, amazing. We were very happy there. But from a property management, from a property investing point of view, that was not the sound decision. Yeah. Townsville market was pretty low when we bought it in 2016. April 2016, we bought it for 350,000. We thought the market bottomed out. We were wrong. Yeah, when we sold it in 2020, I think we sold it for less than we bought it for. So there's a loss there. Yeah. But
a learning experience. Let's just put it down as
learning experience. But
and the memories, the wonderful memories that you had, because that whole sort of foreshore area there on the Strand and all, it is on its day, it's magical looking out over Maggie Island and all. I mean, it can be.
Yeah, we were on the other side on Flinders Street near the CBD.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Like my walk to work took 2 minutes. Beautiful.
So you got that value out of it. You just didn't get the capital appreciation
Absolutely
value out
not. We did not get the capital gains.
All right. So here we are. We're one down and a little bit of sort of an experience there. Mm. What happens next? Do we start thinking there's actually a science to this? There's an approach that we need to take. We're starting to get educated because we know you went and did a plan with our team. But tell us about that process and the sequence of how all that came together.
So after we've acquired Townsville, we started thinking that, hey, maybe that's the way we're going to go, because both our careers were going up and double income, no kids, perfect situation to kind of start saving even more. Braden got deployed to Iraq for 6 months with the Defense Force. We just got this savings really kind of booming from that. And when we moved to Melbourne in 2018, so we kept the Townsville property, rented it out. And in Melbourne, I made another kind of step up in my career. So all was going well for us, and we've got money for another deposit. I got pregnant with our daughter. And that's when we kind of got the team of professionals involved, made a property plan, as you mentioned before. And we got our Brisbane house in August of 2019. That was our second purchase. Sasha was 6 months then. I was on parental leave, and the price was $450,000 in Brisbane. We've the thing we did differently this time. We realized that we need to really have this scientific approach and get a team behind us, have a mortgage broker and have buyer's agent as well work for us to select the property. So we've been listening to the TPC then for well over a year, maybe about 2 years, and just getting the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Yeah, and we acted on it.
So 450 purchase price. I'm looking at your platform on More now, and I can see current valuation around 723,000. So that certainly is paying the bills. That's going all right.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about selecting that asset. Yeah. I love having these conversations with my colleagues like, oh, how did you do that? Did you just buy whatever? I'm like, you have to be really scientific here, guys. You just can't buy whatever. Well, you can, but it's not going to get the same results.
So then what did you do next? So you've got, you had Townsville in and out. You've now got Brisbane. What was the next purchase you made?
We sold Townsville after we got Brisbane. So we had two properties, Townsville and Brisbane. And then we realized that we need to divest Townsville, thanks to all the knowledge that we've been acquiring, and that the cost of opportunity is too great there. Townsville was actually costing us money because of the huge body corporate bills. And we ended up selling it to the tenants that were occupying it. About 10% loss we got on that from the purchase price. But it is what it is, so lesson learned. We sold Townsville, and then we got Adelaide, another selective purchase too. February 2021 we got it when COVID was raging. We were saving, not spending. I was pregnant with my second child by then too, so it's all kind of happening in that really compressed 4 or 5 years for us. So we got Adelaide in February 2021 for 482,000, I think. Ben, you're looking at that platform now.
I am 482,500. Yes. And current value on that is 731,000. So you're short term, because it won't be as good as this, but that's an 18% compounding return per annum year to date. So there's
It's
definitely a
ridiculous.
living.
Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But it is true.
Yeah, well, I mean, even the Queensland property is still running at sort of 13%, compounding return. Now, again, that will settle down. I don't want anyone in the community to think that, wow, this game's easy in terms of that particular story. But they both have been pretty terrific purchases through your buyer's agent as part of that particular story.
Yeah, there are downsides because both are older properties, lots of maintenance. So we would love to have that story of set and forget, but it's not happening for these two because things just come up there. We had like tenant issue in Brisbane House, so yeah, the property was left run down and thrashed pretty much. So we had to invest a bit to get it up to living standards again. So which is
Yeah,
now
it's
rented
not, it's
again.
not
Yeah,
all it's
so
not all smooth sailing, is it? I mean,
no, it is
ultimately,
not at all. You have to
no.
work for it.
Yeah, those particular marketplaces that we're talking about, there are the sort of lower entry level areas, and so even though some of them are gentrifying, you are definitely seeing, that's always the risk when you're, sort of in that entry level market, because most people who want to buy in those locations will buy. The first home buyers will buy, and they will take care of their properties. And the ones who may not be in a position to buy may not necessarily have the same sort of feelings around protecting the asset, and they just think it's a means to an end. And sometimes that can happen. So tenant selection is always difficult when you're in that sort of mid to lower socio-demographic area.
There's a couple of things you can do to mitigate that too, can't you, Miller? Because you've got landlord insurance for one, so that you get that protect, and then the other part is we've been on record as saying we prefer established over new properties, right? So new properties give you the sleep at night factor of, generally speaking, at a headline level, you can set and forget a lot easier. But ultimately, we're trying to chase the land value, and so what you've done is chase the right land to asset ratio, which is great. So the way that we mitigate that is, one, having landlord insurance, but the other way is to factor in maintenance. And I've told the story on this podcast a couple of times where one of the property managers that I caught up recently when I was in Queensland said, "We love your clients," which clearly stroked my ego. But I leaned in and said, "Why is that?" And they said, because they're educated and they understand that when we come to them and we say there's a few things that we're going to do proactively to look after these properties, they go, "Sure, no problem. I've factored that in. Let me know what we need." Versus some other investor groups who go in thinking that it's an event that they do once, and over the journey there's nothing else that they need to come back to. So I've had properties that are flooded. I've had issues with tenants. I've had maintenance that I've needed to address, and that's part of it. And I guess for me, it's the game of knowing that holding a property portfolio is constant white water. And the idea that you think it's going to be clear water is a fallacy, but the whole game is to make sure you stay out of the heavy surf and just stay in that white water. So there's some things you can do there. So how did you navigate those things, Miller? Was that something that you took in your stride? Probably some levels of anxiety at the time, but is that what's your perspective on those things now?
The maintenance, you mean, or the things that come
Maintenance
up?
issues, tenanting stuff, all future things that may pop up for you?
I kind of got used to it. I realized that that's part of it. That's part of the package. You get it if you get like that as you said, an older property, established asset in a high growth potential. Yeah, you do have to. It took me a while to adjust to the idea because when things just kept coming up, like, oh, can it just stop, please? Like we had like a couple of really rough periods where we were buying air conditioners, spending like $1,000 on this and on that, and it all usually comes like from all three of them, like boom, and you're like, oh, another email. Yeah. But well, we work as a team, so we kind of divvied it up. So we try to kind of look after one property and the other, and definitely respond to most of the maintenance requests straight away. Yeah.
Yeah, like a terrific landlord should, in terms of making sure that there's lovely, safe, quiet enjoyment of the property that you're building. And again, over such a short period of time, there's been hundreds of thousands of dollars of book value gain. So that's looking really good. Let's now talk to the third property, and then I want to sort of talk about the whole idea of rent vesting, which is what you guys have been doing, because I think that's going to be an interesting part of the next part of your chapter on your journey.
Absolutely, yeah.
So tell us about number 3.
Yeah, number 3. So pandemic savings obviously here for the number 3. October 2021, we used the same buyer's agent again, and we got a Gold Coast unit for 425,000. I think that's the lowest price purchase for us, which provides us with a highest rent, surprisingly, because of the area. It's surface paradise. Everyone wants to be there. Yeah, hopefully we got long-term clients. They're locked in now. We did a bit of work there at the end of last year when the lease. I think the lease ran out, or whatever happened. So we did it a bit up, and it's much nicer now than when we bought it for. So yeah, when we're very lucky with timing, because we got the fixed rate on that one for another 3.5 years. So really, really lucky. Yeah, very grateful to our mortgage broking team.
So let's build the scene here, right? So you think surface paradise unit, and you think whoa, but the first thing that comes to mind is a big high rise on the beach, which is kind of revisiting the challenges that we had in the Townsville property, right? But to really set the scene for everyone, this is well, you'll tell me if I've got the vintage wrong, but it's a 70s style, very low boutique property that's walking distance. So it actually gets all the benefits of all the attractions that are in that area, but it's a stone's throw back away in a low walk-up building that doesn't have all of the pools and the gyms and the caretakers
No, it does
and the
not.
lifts and all that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
It still has the body corporate, but very kind of, it's much lower. The fees are much lower because it's only 4 units in the block there. And yeah.
And the timing was good too, because there was a real opportunity at the time that you did it as well, because since then there's been more growth for your portfolio, and people would be absolutely killing to get units like this for the prices that we were able to get it for back then. But clearly there is a land value component here of being one of 4 that's in a very highly desirable part of the Gold Coast, without being caught up in the traditional postcard view of what you would think around surface paradise, because it's not amongst that.
So let's summarize the story here. So first purchase in the sort of investment. So Petrie was back in 2018.
2019, August.
2019, my bad, 2019. And so since that time, since 2019, I'm looking at your numbers here, over $2 million worth of property value, and an total property equity story as it currently sits of $814,776 since 2019.
I'm laughing too when I'm hearing that. I'm like, is it happening to me?
Pretty impressive.
I've had 4 years.
Yeah. Now, again, doesn't always go like that. So we need to, we've obviously been through a very, very nice sort of property period during that time, and we're playing the long game here. But I'm looking at, your wealth clock and your wealth speeds in good shape, your net income speed sort of going quite well. You've got a good saving speed. You're very diligent around your spending. So it's just a story for me around optimization, plan to become what you plan to become. And you've really been able to sort of, again, hit those notes when we've asked you to hit the notes based on your plan. So we've been able to build that out. And to your point, with Hayden in the, Braden in the army, that's obviously moved you around a little bit there. But now you've got to start thinking about, are you going to continually going to be this rent investor indefinitely, or what's the next chapter for you in terms of what you're thinking about for your situation, Mila?
Yeah, we're at a bit of a crossroads now, because when we originally planned it over 5 years ago, yes, we thought we would be rent investors for life. This is what we want, but come kids, and we really want to give them the home, like the permanency. So we started thinking about purchasing our PPR, and we recently talked to our mortgage broking team, and well, we can borrow 390,000 with our existing levels of income and our existing borrowing. So not what we want. So we're asking ourselves what next, how we can get to where we want to be, well, obviously we need to grow our income quite considerably to be able to purchase like in Melbourne or even Geelong. Or we just adapt our plan and maybe we divest. We don't know yet. I don't know. I haven't answered that question. So if you can offer us any insights, we'd be very grateful. Well,
the inside is that, you walk a mile and you've seen a mile. And so as much as the original plan was to rent vest and this idea of flexibility, because you were transient in the different areas, you've been able to accommodate your lifestyle in the different locations you've had to move for opportunities and for work. Now that sounds like those opportunities and that desire to move around more is getting less. Now that the families come along, that also, that nesting element of life starts to play a role. These are difficult decisions because, we do know that when we sell a property, that there is going to be a recycle cost associated with that, and there's going to be a capital gain event, and so some of those paper gains will be passed on to the government coffers in terms of the tax we have to pay. So it really then, from my point of view, is if I was guiding you, I'd be really stress testing around how strong is that desire and how much determination do you have about that outcome in what time frame. So if we could extrapolate the time frame for say 3 years, then what does that situation look like? And then we just get into the models, would make the numbers adjust accordingly, and we'd show a buy and a sell scenario, or just a buy scenario where we might sort of consider, say, buying something that is a renovator's delight. So at least we get the asset, we hold on to that, and we haven't had to sell any of the others, and then we effectively plan an arrival into that property at some point. So if we can get, say, some tenants in there in the earlier stages, and then start to think about, all right, leave them in for 12 months as we keep building up our buffers. And as interest rates will eventually start to come down in 2024, your borrowing power, I suspect APRA will hopefully tweak their 3% buffer rate. And so that will give us a little bit more borrowing power. So those things will play out over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. And then, there might be an allocation of 100 or 150,000 to renovate that property, and then have something that feels new, feels like it's going to be a place that you can move into. They would be the types of scenarios that I would want you and Braden to be thinking about and feeling comfortable about, sort of what those stories look like. But like anything, some people can use the acquisition of property to go up the property ladder, and they may liquidate a couple of those to get a more significant principal place of residence asset. That is also, from an investment point of view, that can also be very meaningful, because our principal place of residence is also capital gains exempt free. So we then hold on to that asset for the next 20, 25 years, and then we downsize, and then we're able to then allocate some of that to a large lump sum super allocation as well. So the good news that you've given yourself, Mila, is you have choices, right? And none of them are necessarily, because you've done so well over the course of executing and taking action, this is not a difficult conversation. This is just a conversation of opportunities. And I really like that about what you've done. And that's a credit to you, and obviously to Braden, in terms of there's been some delayed gratification in there. There's been some sensible money management. There's been some knowledge building and education that you've been doing. So all of that, when you put the sum of the parts together, it becomes a pretty good outcome.
Thanks.
And it definitely circles back to part of the early conversation too around investing in our education, because the more that you can actually invest in your ability for borrowing capacity, the better you are able to fulfill your asset goals. Because I think there's a real learning opportunity here in your story, Mila, because a lot of people want to be rent investors, which is fine and it's wonderful, but it's also a really timely reminder that when you then want to pivot, it's like the Titanic. It takes a while for the Titanic to tack and shift, right? And, because we've got LVR.
I hope it won't sink.
No, you won't sink. You won't.
You definitely won't sink.
Sorry, Bryce.
Well, we got to remember LVR, right? And LVR wise, you're fine. You've got equity, but the other part is the DTI, the debt to income, and it's the ability for the bank to go, okay, do you have enough income to service that? And that's the challenge when you do a rent vesting model. And then you go, well, okay, no problem, that's fine. That served me for the last 5 years. But now having thought processes like what you're having, Mila, means that if you then want to put another asset in, usually at a bigger price, without the benefit of having rent attached to it, without the benefit of having any taxation rebates that are attached to it. It takes a big chunk of the percentage of your overall income that needs to be allocated to that asset. And as you found, I think you said 350, was that right? The 395?
390,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
much better.
Yeah. Which so I would encourage the community to, and you, Mila, just to listen to that last bit again, what Ben said, because it was a very, very prudent plan that allows you to pivot from the plan that you're doing with rent vesting, but also keep an eye on the North Star around wanting to touch and feel your own walls, and establish that as part of your plan too. But I'm with Ben. Well done. This is a remarkable story, and again, we don't want to sit here and go, it's easy to make 800,000 in 4 years. You had the benefit of taking action, teaching yourself in a part of the cycle, which was well. But the thing for you is, if you keep playing the decades game, this story is only going to get exponentially better over the journey. I'm interested to understand how you've navigated the last 14 months with 12 interest rate rises in that 14 months. What has that meant for you and Braden as a conversation topic around having a portfolio like you do have?
Look, we definitely saw everything increase in price. The insurances, landlord insurances, maintenance went up, like everything. Interest rates. Well, we're not stressing. Like I say, we're just steady. We need to weather this storm. We have the buffers to weather this storm. Our incomes kind of still is more than our expenditure. So we're in good position. We're prepared to weather it out. I feel for those in community who are maybe in less privileged, lucky, prepared position. Yeah. But yeah, we're not running and jumping up and down about it. It is happening. It is what it is. We just need to adjust. We've always been very diligent, very kind of disciplined about our spending. It's about discipline. Like my probably biggest money advice is discipline your mind, discipline your spending, and you'll be fine. Yeah.
And you've created a buffer. And do you know what the buffer does? The buffer buys you time. And if you can buy time, you can stay in the game longer. And if you can stay in the game longer, you get better results. So it's just there's no secret. It's just applying the basics regularly and routinely. Do you have conversations with friends about this, Mila? Is there networks in Australia that you have conversations about money and investing, or is it's largely a private thing with you and Braden?
It is a private thing. I would really love to have a community of like-minded people who I can call friends, close acquaintances, who I can bounce ideas off. I have one friend who's kind of a bit ahead of me in like age and properties, but and where they're at. But I really miss that bit. And I don't know, do you guys plan to organize like an event for maybe your clients or something where we all can come together and chat about that? I would love to come. It's really the missing piece for us, is having the group of like-minded individuals who would be close with, and because people around us and our social circle families are just not on the same path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for context, I mean, I'm not going to disclose your incomes, but your incomes are typical. They're not sort of, they're slightly above average, but they're not over, they're not six-figure salaries or anything along those lines. But because you've got the 3 properties, there's also, just doing some rough numbers on that, you're sort of in that sort of $72,000 to $75,000 of gross rental income coming off that. So when I look at your overall income number, it looks pretty reasonable to be able to do that. But it never started as that. And so the point we're making is we all get it for our community as well. Getting that equity position or getting that deposit saved up to get started. And we also know that, the next generation of millennials who are coming through, they're going to have to start looking at properties in that sort of sub 500 or around the 500 mark, right? In terms of, for those more fortunate, or, those people who are on the other side of kids and in their mid 30s to say mid 40s, they've got equity, they've got the income, the kids are all sorted. And so their likelihood to buy in that 750 to 1.5 million range is a lot higher. And that's the truth. So we've got to start thinking about, and Bryce and I will do more conversations to our community, because obviously, if you listen to our first 100 episodes, it's all about, owner-occupier appeal and investing closer to town and all of those types of things. But remember, that was sort of coming up to almost 10 years ago that strategy happened. So you've got to also think about how you solve problems. I mean, from our point of view as an advisors, and also helping the next generation coming into our community, is the reality is for those people, they are going to have to look at, the sort of city fringe markets and commutable markets to major centres. They're going to have to look at a little bit more income to get them along on that journey, because interest rates are a little bit higher. But it's still not a barrier of entry. It's the mindset that stops people thinking, that's why it's too hard for us. So whenever I hear about millennials, sort of talking about that, and even, the next generation coming through, they're sort of like, this is impossible for us. Well, if you take that type of mindset into this story, absolutely, because that's your belief. Your belief is it's impossible, so it'll always remain impossible. But, that's the best part about doing these winter series shows, is that we're just showcasing people that you went off and tried something yourself. You then got some professional advice. There's been an accelerant put onto your story as part of getting that professional advice. So I think the money, has certainly, the juice has been worth the squeeze, as we say. So, congratulations to you. My final question, because I'm conscious of time, I want to give you the mic, and I want, obviously you knew you were coming on to the winter series. What's some of the key things that you would say to others who are sitting on the fence, who are thinking this is not possible for us, irrespective of their upbringing, because yours has been one of clear drive and motivation that you never want to be in that situation again, and that's completely understandable. But what are some of the takeaways you'd love to share with our community, Mila?
My biggest one is anything is possible, and you become what you believe in. So if you believe in yourself and you can do it, you absolutely can. Well, look at me. It's just been 10 years since I've come to Australia. I didn't know anyone. I didn't have local education, no friends, nothing. I just came. I worked as a waitress to start with. And now I manage projects. So you can do it. You just need a clear belief and a plan, really. That's all you do. Use your brain, use what's here. It's all in the mind. So I've spent considerable time training my mind to be abundant, to think abundant. And around the habits, implement good habits in terms of your spending. Plan your spending, be disciplined, and you can get there. Obviously educate yourself, because education brings you power. Your earning capacity grows with your education. And if you are an entrepreneurial type of person, well, I'm not. I'm trying like side hustles and whatever. Like just do it. Like if you're an entrepreneur, go launch yourself. Like apply yourself, apply your skills, apply your brain, and don't buy stuff that you don't need, because that's a major drain.
Great advice. My final question is in the same family as Ben's. I put a call out to say come and join us on the winter series. It's actually quite confronting to come on and share your numbers and be transparent and talk about your aspirations and your goals and Townsville not working and all that sort of stuff. So why did you come on? Why have you been so brave as to be transparent about your particular circumstance?
I don't know, something just shifted in me, and I wanted to share. I wanted to inspire maybe someone. If like one woman or one person would listen to me and it would motivate them to act, I'd be so happy. And I just wanted to give back to the community, because we've been gaining the knowledge that you share, guys, and thank you for that. And and thanks to you, probably we are where we're at now, and thanks to our actions too, but the knowledge you provided. So I just wanted to give back. And share. And well, Braden was nagging me for over a year, saying, "Go, you should go. They don't want another male there. They don't want another male. You go."
That is true. Braden is a very wise man. We did want to hear from you, but. Thanks for modelling action taking. I mean, when you break it all down, that's what you've done. You've modelled action taking. I think there's a takeaway here from the migrant mindset. I think there's something in that for everyone, where you've taken opportunities and you've had a swing and you've had a go. So On behalf of everyone here on the Property Couch, thanks for joining us on the Winter Series, Mila.
Thank you. See
Thanks
you.
very much.
Oh wow, Ben! How cool was that? That was an incredible story, and we spent a bit of time speaking about the action orientation, but it's something that you and I probably, early days on this podcast, we spend all this time teaching people the buyer's decision quadrant and the property investment. Now we're just trying to teach people how to take action, and that was modeled beautifully.
Yeah, it's a classic case of, that knowledge is empowering if you act on it. So, I mean, we've been, sort of double clicking on that message forever, but it's also fortune favors the brave. Now, here's someone who didn't know anyone at all, got an opportunity in South Australia, moved across and made an amazing life for herself. And from my point of view, is making an awesome contribution to this country because she's getting on with it, right? And, the other big takeaway for me is that mindset around thinking in abundance. Though that's a powerful mindset to be in, right? In terms of anything is possible, fortune favors the brave, and this abundance attitude. I tell you what, I'm going to be, really enjoying watching the next 5 years, 10 years, the next couple of decades in terms of the impact that Mila and Braden are going to make on their lives, their daughters' lives, and the contribution that they're going to do. So it is a wonderful story of coming across and making good.
Good pick up by you, Ben, because to quote her, she said, I trained my mind to be abundant. I trained my mind to be abundant. On a backstory of living with someone else, having singles and other strangers in, like, if you want to sort of compare your story as to why you can't change your future compared to Miller's, I reckon you probably would find that it's probably easier to platform from where you are from where she was.
Correct. And there was a little hint in there about a divorce that also occurred in there, which we didn't go into. We didn't need to. It wasn't something that we wanted to talk about. But that's still facing adversity. There's still challenges associated with it. There's a rebuild that's got to come after that you've got to bring your attitude and your mindset along with. So it's just a great story of get busy living, get busy doing, right? It's a ripper.
Yeah, no, it was a ripper. And we've all got baselines. If you're born in this country, you're pretty lucky to have a baseline of trust around money. So even having a baseline with no trust around money and putting it under the mattress. So, Mila, you're a brave soul. We appreciate you coming on. We loved you and I, Ben. We talk about this off air. We talk about it a bit on air, but it's just this really awesome opportunity for you and me just to lean in and learn from other people, right? Particularly with circumstances that are atypical to our own, being blessed, being born in this country. So that was exciting. And thanks for putting your hand up, Mila. We know it's brave. So, mate, we've got more to go on the winter series. We're excited about it, mate. So until next week.
Bryce, we mentioned it earlier a couple of times during the show. Knowledge is empowering. So please act on it.
Please act on it. All right. See you next week.